Hey everyone, and welcome to RUBIN'S Mind Lab, where we break down the latest research into what it really means. Ever wonder why sometimes you can recall a memory so vividly, like it just happened, and other times it feels like trying to grab smoke? Well, today we're diving deep into how our brain's attention superpower helps us find specific memories within the vast library of our mind. This paper is all about how we precisely zoom in on the exact memory we need, especially when there are lots of similar memories competing for attention. Think about remembering the specific details of one dinner party out of hundreds you've had. How does your brain pick out just that one? It's a big question in memory research, and these scientists have developed a cool new way to test it. So, the big puzzle here is this. We know attention is super important for memory, but how exactly does it work when we're trying to pull something out of our long-term memory storage? Scientists have studied attention a lot when we're looking at things in the real world or when we're holding information in our short-term memory, like a phone number we're about to dial. But when it comes to the epic amount of information stored in our long-term memory, how attention helps us pick the right file is still a bit of a mystery. To crack this open, the researchers took an idea from working with short-term memory. They use something called a retrocue. Imagine you're holding a bunch of items in your mind and then a little signal pops up that tells you, hey, focus on this one specific item because that's what you're going to need next. This retrocue helps direct your attention. The scientists wondered if they could use this same trick with long-term memories. They designed a clever experiment. First, participants had to learn associations between pictures of scenes and two specific objects that appeared in those scenes. They weren't just memorizing the objects, but also where in the scene the objects were. Think of it like learning that a red ball was on the left side of a park scene and a blue car was on the right. They did this for a bunch of scenes and objects. After they had learned all this, it was time to test their memory. During the memory test, participants would see one of the learned scenes again. Then a cue would appear. This cue was either informative, like a little arrow pointing to the left side of the scene, hinting that the object you need to find was on the left. Or it was a neutral cue that didn't give any hints. After the cue, participants had to identify which of two objects was originally associated with that scene. And here is where it gets interesting. When the cue was helpful, meaning it pointed to the correct object, people were faster and more accurate at remembering the object. That's the benefit, but if the cue pointed to the wrong place, it actually made things a bit harder, slowing them down and making them more likely to make a mistake. That's the cost. This shows that attention really can be directed within long-term memories. What's really cool is that these attention benefits happen whether the cue was shown before they saw the scene again or after. And even if they only had a very short time to process the hint, the benefits were still there. This suggests that our brain might be able to start directing attention to memories very early in the retrieval process, even before we fully bring the memory into our conscious awareness. This experimental setup is like a Swiss Army knife for memory researchers. It gives them a precise tool to study exactly how attention works when searching through our long-term memories. This could help scientists understand more about how we focus on certain memories, why we forget others, and even how our brain makes these decisions. Before we get to the main results, it's important to know that the first part of the experiment, the learning phase, was super effective. Participants were really good at learning which objects belonged to which scenes and where they were located. Their accuracy in learning was really high, almost perfect, and they got faster over time as they learned more. This means when they got to the memory retrieval part, they had solid memories to work with. In experiment 1A, they tested if attention cues could help participants pick out an object that was in the scene from an object that was totally new, something they had never seen before. So it was kind of like a simple "did I see this before?" test. What they found was that people were faster when the cue was right and slower when the cue was wrong. But their accuracy was already so high, almost at the ceiling, that the cues didn't really make them much more accurate. It seems like when the choice is between something familiar and something completely new, our brain doesn't need as much attentional help to get it right. Then they made it harder. In experiment 1B, participants had to choose between an object that was in the scene and another object that they had learned, but that belonged to a different scene. This means both objects were familiar. Now they really had to rely on remembering the specific scene-object connection. Here, the attention cues made a big difference in accuracy. People were more correct when the cue was helpful. And response times also showed the benefit. This experiment really highlights how attention helps when memories are very similar and competing. Experiment 2 tweaked the timing. They wanted to see if attention could still help if people only had a very short time between seeing the scene and being asked to recall the object. What they found was pretty amazing. Even with a super short window, attention cues still helped both with accuracy and speed. This suggests that our brain can quickly tune into the right memory even when time is tight. So, what's the big takeaway from all these experiments? The main finding is solid. Intentionally directing your attention, even internally, can significantly boost your ability to retrieve specific memories from long-term storage. This benefit is seen in how quickly you can recall information, and in some cases, how accurately you can do it. Especially when the memories are very similar and to raise a lot of competition. This study's real contribution is the method. They've created a reliable way to test attention's role in long-term memory. By separating the learning phase from the retrieval phase, they can make sure the memories being tested are well learned and controlled. This allows them to isolate the effects of attention more purely. One of the most exciting parts is the exploration of when attention kicks in. The fact that attention benefits were seen even with very short retrieval intervals in experiment, two hints that attention might be able to influence memory retrieval very early on, maybe even before the memory is fully brought into our working memory. This challenges the idea that attention only acts as a helper after the memory is already active in our mind. The researchers propose a few possibilities for when attention might be working. It could be really early, affecting the initial stages of pulling the memory out. Or it could happen later, once the memory is in our short-term workspace. Or it could even be just at the very last moment, helping us decide which of the retrieved memories is the right one. Their results lean towards the idea that attention can be flexible and start its work very early, but they admit more research is needed to know for sure. Now, like any study, this one has its limits. They tested attention using broad spatial cues, like left versus right. They didn't get into super fine-grained detail about exactly how specific the spatial information was when attention was guiding memory. Also, they primarily used this choose one of two type of answer, which tells us if they got it right, but not necessarily how well they remembered other details about the object, like its color or texture. Because this was primarily a behavioral study, it's hard to say exactly what's happening in the brain. They measured accuracy and how long it took to answer, but to truly understand the internal brain processes, more advanced techniques like brain imaging would be super helpful. These could pinpoint when and where in the brain attention is really doing its work during memory retrieval. Overall, this research is a fantastic step forward in understanding how attention helps us navigate our long-term memories. It provides a neat experimental blueprint that future scientists can use to ask even more specific questions. It really underscores how attention isn't just about seeing things in the world, but also about skillfully directing our internal focus to the specific knowledge we need, right when we need it. Imagine the possibilities. This work could lead to a better understanding of memory disorders, or perhaps even ways to improve learning and memory in general. It opens up doors to explore how we retrieve different types of memories, how memory strength and age affect attention, and how competition between similar memories plays a role. It's a really exciting intersection of memory and attention. And if you're interested in digging into the details yourself, the researchers have made all their data and analysis scripts publicly available. This is a great practice for transparency and for allowing other scientists to build upon their work. So, next time you're trying to recall a specific detail, remember that your brain isn't just passively searching. It's actively deploying your attention superpower to zoom in on exactly what you need. It's pretty incredible when you think about it. That's it for this episode of RUBIN'S Mind Lab. If you enjoyed this deep dive into memory and attention, please give this video a thumbs up, share it with a friend who loves neuroscience, and subscribe for more fascinating research breakdowns. Let me know in the comments what memory mystery you'd like us to explore next. See you in the next one.